I'll go ahead and start then. So I'm Georgia, and I'm lucky to be here. So yeah, I have two companies right now, Shavira at the top and Bulb Security at the bottom. So products and consulting. Not that this is a company pitch or anything. This is totally a hacker talk, but just in case anybody wants consulting or products. But we're going to talk about mobile. Everybody here has a mobile phone, right? Hands up for the mobile. Okay, better hands up if you don't have a mobile, if you're like my dad. My dad just got his first mobile phone, in fact. It's a flip phone, so not much. Yeah, this is, me, the ultimate empress of phone hacking, and my dad doesn't have a phone. It's kind of insulting, honestly. Or maybe he's listening to my talks, I don't know. I send them to him, but I don't know that he knows how to use YouTube, so it's possible he has no idea what I do. All right, so a little bit more about me. So I added this slide just today, so it may not end up in the final slide deck because I already turned it in. But I'm from DC as of about a month ago. So actually, I'm from Texas, which is a lot like here, except not as temperate. So it's hot all the time. So I moved, up to DC for the businesses. And less than a month after I moved there, this is what happens. People told me I should buy food, so I did. I bought some food, but then I ate it all by like Friday because it was like there was all this food in my house, so I just ate it. And then I was stuck until like this was Monday, and I finally dug myself out. So, I've been, I guess, on the LA starvation diet for the last couple days. So I ate everything there was in sight yesterday. So yeah, that's my house over there. Well, it's not even in the picture. I'm at like the end of the row, and I climb out through this. Anybody use Uber? So like the Uber guy was mad at me because it's like they can only wait for 5 minutes, and he's watching me right on the other side of this snowbank, right? He's like, I can only wait for 5 minutes as I'm like in the middle of it, and I lost my shoe, and I had to dig my shoe out, but I made it, and I got here. So you guys should be glad that I made it because I could have very easily just been like, oh, I can't get out of my house. I'm not coming, but I did. All right, so that's not very mobile. Clearly, the snowplow is not at this time very mobile at all, but it's supposed to be a mobile device, but not right now. But actually it is a mobile device because you can actually get on the Virginia like government site and you can see where the snowplows are. But they lie to you because they say the snowplows that are dead are actually there. Like it's like, oh, you're just about to be plowed all the time when it's dead. So they actually do have like GPS on the things there, but they don't work very well because, like in this picture, they die. But anyway, mobile devices, right? We all have smartphones, except for my dad. But is this a mobile device? So this is where it gets funny, right? You can barely tell here, but the toilet is actually blue. So I sent it to my assistant, right? I sent my presentation. I said, make everything blue. I didn't realize she was going to make like the toilet blue, but then I kind of liked it. So we have here a blue toilet. But blue or white or whatever, is this toilet a mobile device? Well, we'd like to hope not, right? I mean, our basic human instinct about the toilet, we shouldn't have any mobile things with that. Well, unfortunately, thank the Japanese for this because they got to make everything an Internet of Things because there actually is a toilet mobile vulnerability in the wild. A particular kind of toilet. I haven't seen any of them over here in the US, but our time will come, no doubt, because we like Internet of Things just as much as anybody. But TrustWave Spider Labs, anybody TrustWave Spider Labs here want to take credit for this, but they found a vulnerability. Every now and then people get really bitchy on Twitter and they're like, this whole Internet of Things thinks is a crock. You can find a vulnerability in anything. It shouldn't make you famous. Whatever, but this is cool. So a toilet has a hard-coded Bluetooth pin, so it's a Bluetooth toilet, so anybody within range of it can just look up what the pin is. I think it's 0000 according to my slide. I was going to say 1111, shows how much I know. Anyway, according to the vulnerability report, attackers could cause the unit to unexpectedly open/close the lid, activate bidet or air dry functions, causing discomfort or distress to the user. I don't know about you, but getting my email stolen has nothing on this. No. Okay. So yeah, mobile is here and now, at least in Japan. But something a little more close to home for the time being. Is this a mobile device? A car? Well, if you're poor like me, no, seriously, around here in LA, right? I was walking trying to get here. Eventually I had to call an Uber because my GPS was like, no, you cannot walk from Ocean Avenue to here. Forget it. But I was trying, and homeless people kept talking to me like I was one of them. And I had my backpack with me, everything I brought with me. But I guess you guys as homeless people wear like really fancy clothes because, yeah. I apparently was one step down from your average LA homeless person. They wanted to give me money. So, you guys got something going right. Anyway, so for those that have a car, if you have an old car like me, no vulnerabilities. But if you have a new car, this is what might happen to you. So, we all probably saw this at Black Hat this past year. Charlie Miller and all of them did this. They broke into the car remotely. It's super fancy if you do it without all the wires into the front of the car, but they did it remotely through a mobile modem. So a lot of the newer cars, they have that fancy like GPS, Sirius radio thing in the front. That's actually an Android, just, without like the phone part. Well, it has the phone part. It even has the screen part. So I guess it's just a bigger Android. But anyway, so you hack the Android through the mobile modem and make the car brakes disable and things like that. So, it happens. That's a mobile device for sure. So that's the kind of thing we're actually potentially dealing with. So my CEO that I just hired, he has a Jeep, which is actually the same kind of car this is. But the first thing he did when he got it is he took the radio out and put a custom radio. So I'm really mad at him because there's free research for me gone down the drain. Anyway, here's a mobile device maybe, right? This is like the idea of what a mobile device was supposed to be. This is actually my first international conference ever in Cali, Colombia. Like not Columbia, Maryland, like Columbia Drug Lord, Columbia. That was interesting. But they took us to see this museum where they had tobacco, maybe, that they grew there. I'm not sure it was tobacco. But anyway, they had this phone. I'm like, oh my God, it's the archetypal mobile phone. So my guess is this is probably not a mobile device, but I'm not sure. So I'll leave that up to you, philosophers. Is this a mobile device? Because it doesn't have a mobile modem, right? So who knows? It just calls up to the main house from, I guess, the slave quarters. Who knows? So, mobile risk. So the problem I have with mobile is pretty simple. Mobile devices like to attach to a lot of different things. So who here is a pin tester? Any pin testers? A few pin testers. So who here, instead of being pin testers, we have the easy job, us pin testers. Who here is in charge of their company's security? You guys have the hard job. We should give you guys cookies. Well, you guys have it hard, so when your job is in fact either as a pen tester, because again, thanks to TrustWave, we all actually have to do a good job now, because or else we'll get sued. Thanks, TrustWave. Our other goal, is to hopefully find all the vulnerabilities. But those of you who are pen testers know, they say, you can only test between 9 and 10 a.m. on a Saturday, and that's it. And you can only test these specific IP addresses. But again, only between 9 and 10 on a Saturday, so forget it if it's anything else. And no social engineering, and no client side, and no mobile, and yeah, that's about it. So, no wonder we do a shitty job. Who knew? Anyway, so mobile devices have this little problem. We're used to protecting the perimeter. We're all about the perimeter. We buy our fancy next-gen firewalls that, fix everything, right? They see all that malware going through the perimeter. Well, maybe not. But anyway, say that they did. Well, our mobile devices have additional ways to get out of the perimeter. I went to this conference. It was this really fancy business conference, and they had Robert Herjavec, the guy from Dancing with the Stars and the Shark Tank, which I imagine he probably knows very little about security because he spent all of his time, being famous. I wouldn't either if I made that kind of money. But he kept saying over and over again, his speechwriters anyway, told him to say that every endpoint is now your internet facing systems. And that's very true about mobile. Because if you think about your phone, they got this mobile modem, they have a phone number. They're basically internet facing, which is kind of scary if you think about them being on your corporate network. I see some corporate networks are like, okay, we put all the phones in this own VLAN for the guests and things. But most places I go to aren't like that. They're just like, oh, here's the Wi-Fi password. Have fun. Yikes. So that's our security, people. So yeah, I like to attack things, MSO 8067, it's like how many years old now? Like 8? And it still works? No. I recently did this job and they didn't have any MSO 8067 and I was so excited. But they had an MSO 950, which was, I guess, a year later, but just as bad. So I still got it on all of their servers. So, they're like, nobody can get to them because they're on the internal network, right? So there's no bad guys on the internal network ever. No. Well, what about your phones, right? Like right now, seriously, one of my people that I subcontract for made me do this, right? They made me install this like Chinese app store. And it wasn't even in scope. It was for like a different job, but there was an Android portion that was out of scope. So, I just had to like give my phone up, basically. And now it downloads 2 new apps every day. Seriously, every day I wake up with 2 new apps, and most of it's written in Chinese, but occasionally there's like a word like root that's in English, and I can only assume what that means. And this is why I don't have customer data on my mobile devices, ladies and gentlemen. But anyway, so your mobile devices are coming in and out of the network every day, probably. And they've got direct connections to all the other devices. Those fancy servers with all the fancy credit card data and stuff. And they can have a direct connection to them. We think these things are kind of dumb. We think they're, a lot like this guy, but they're really not. They're really capable of doing all sorts of things. They speak TCP/IP. They can throw MSA 08067 just like anybody else. And call out to the network. So, more about that later. Everybody says there's never been anybody that was attributed through their hacks like Target and Sony and all them. It's always social engineering. It's never mobile. So mobile doesn't matter, right? If we're not attributing attacks to mobile, we shouldn't be spending our money on it. But let's think about it. Those of you guys who are in like intrusion detection, right? How much are you actually looking for around mobile? What you can't see can't hurt you, right? Well, at least you're not going to get sued like TrustWave. So, let's assume for a second that maybe mobile is exploitable. Like remote attacks. We love remote code execution, right? That's like the coolest thing ever. It's straight out of 2008. That never happens anymore. Nobody ever gets remote code execution on a modern platform, right? Oops. Until this year at Black Hat, when all the Android devices fell down to stage fright. Stage fright is actually the name of the Android library. It's, not one of those names like, they name them all like sandworm and, horse and pig and things like that for their exploits. But this was actually Android's fault that it was named stage fright. Just a little tidbit, Until you actually start to play with stage fright and it doesn't hit very often, but that's another story for another day. But what I like is cell towers. So cell towers are fun. You can actually buy a cell tower off the internet for pretty cheap for like research purposes, for universities maybe. But if you have a lot of money, you can go to some like Middle Eastern country and get one for a little bit more expensive that's like pre-built to exploit stuff. But, nobody would ever do that, right? If they had a lot of money, they'd never just like sit outside your office with a cell tower. Well, I sit in my apartment with the cell tower. People keep telling me the FCC is going to show up for me one day, but yet they never do. I have a ham license. I have a ham radio license, so that apparently, like, they're in the same band, so maybe that's why they don't show up. But probably they have better things to do than just hang out in my apartment, my guess is. So you can totally buy cell towers, and these guys pretty much take cell towers as law. We saw it years and years ago. About the time I was starting giving talks, Chris Pageant went and gave the talk on, we're going to have a cell tower, and it was all up in arms with everybody because they're like, that's illegal. You're going to exploit people's phones. But yet, it happened, the talk occurred, and life went on. But, that showed what was possible. All you do is jam everybody back to 2G, back to the days of no security where cell towers just said, hi, I'm a cell tower. And the phones just said, okay, cool. We want to get out and keep our people getting, service because that's what they want. People don't want security. They want service. You do too when you're stuck on the side of the road trying to get an Uber. Yes. So anyway, it still works. All of your cell towers today will totally drop back to 2G. So will your phones. They want to stay in service, so that's what they'll do. So if I'm a cell tower and I say, hi, I'm a cell tower, and you can't see anybody who looks like the right kind of cell tower, I suddenly become the most interesting looking cell tower around. And your phone very much wants to talk to me and do whatever I want it to do. Anybody here ever been to China? When you got off the plane at China and turned on your phone, what happened? Everything updated, right? You had a lot of updates in the time it took for you to get from America to China. It was a very big patch Tuesday for your phones. That's a malicious cell tower. They don't just happen in China. So it can happen. Totally it can happen. I need to watch the time. I tend to be chatty. Well, let's say for the sake of argument, remote code execution is dead, even though we've proven it is not. Client-side attacks. We all like that. Us pen testers, we'd love some client-side attacks when they're like only between 8 and 9 a.m. on a Saturday. You know, our browsers, PDF viewers, mobile apps are awesome, right? I mean, I've got new apps every day to try out. I don't even have to download them anymore. It just downloads them for me. How exciting is that? You know, as soon as I accepted the key for the App Store, it can now just download stuff to my phone willy-nilly. If I wasn't a security person, I would find this particularly awesome. I personally find it pretty terrible, but, you know, it's what happens. So we've got our mobile apps, the browsers and things like that. We've even got like mobile protocols. A few years ago, there's like this USSD thing that happened where it was like you could make people automatically dial things from a web page, like kill their phone. So that was exciting. You know, it's really just a matter of when people get around to discovering this stuff, right? Secure coding is hard. I certainly wouldn't want to be in charge of secure coding the internet. So we hit stuff. We make it look like, you know, a PDF and it's got an exploit in it, or a web page and it's got an exploit in it. And they all fall down as long as people browse to our sites. It's really easy to make people browse to sites, right? You know, I have to do it for my job. They're like, please go to this site. And I'm like, I'd really rather not. And they're like, do it anyway if you want to get paid. And so I browsed to it, and now I have a Chinese app store. Yay. Social engineering. So that brings me to social engineering. So I have a very complicated relationship with social engineering. Because I used to give a lot of talks. I don't give as many talks now that I'm doing the business thing, but I gave a lot of talks, right? And, you have to get in and be accepted to give talks, and you have to have, I guess, a certain standard, supposedly, to give a talk. And I always felt like the people who talked about social engineering didn't work for it as hard as I did. I'm like, I throw O-Day. And they're like, yay, I made people click on stuff. And I was kind of pissed off, honestly. I didn't like those people. But I have to take it back. I have to say in front of the world and this video camera that I was wrong about the social engineering thing. Social engineering is the key to all of this. Because when all of my stuff starts working, you guys' stuff still hits every time. So I will give up my O-Days and be sending out SMS phishing for the rest of my life in penance. If you'd like to do SMS phishing, see me after the talk. Yeah, they're turning me into a business person, though it's not working very well. So, you've probably seen it. Probably in your enterprise, you have to do that whole email phishing thing. Like, you've got the Fish Me stuff, and it totally makes sense that instead of sending everybody through social engineering training, they instead, see who clicks on stuff and then make those people take the training at the time so it sticks in your head. Totally cool, right? Way better than having to be like, don't click on shit. Don't click on shit. Anyway, but I don't feel like we're really getting the whole picture here. I feel like there's a lot more to it than just email. Like, for instance, text messages. I started my whole career on text messages. I made a text message botnet, and it made me a star. And that was that. So, I love text messages. We will always be friends, particularly because most mobile phones don't actually follow the specification for text messages, which is awesome, because when stuff deviates from specification, that's where you get bugs. Because the people who write specifications really think about this stuff. And the people who are implementing it are just like, oh, whatever. So, that's where you get your interesting bugs. Things like near-field communication, right? These near-field communication tags, I don't feel like they really took off in the US, but in Europe, seriously, you get in an elevator in a hotel, and it's like, near-field communication tags everywhere. And I'm just like, let's click on this, shall we? Because I'm a curious sort who clicks on everything. But surely it's gonna take off here. But what we like more here in the US is those QR codes, right? We're obsessed. I will never forget one of my first DEF cons, just sitting on the side of the road watching people, and there was this QR code right in the middle of like the big DEF CON sign in the main road, and there was like I guess a scavenger hunt. And people thought that the QR code was part of the scavenger hunt, right? It made sense. So they would come up with their phone and scan it, and then you just see this look of absolute horror on their faces. It would be like, ah! And it turned out it was actually somebody random had just put a QR code that went to Goatsy. I didn't know what Goatsy was at the time, but I do now. And if you don't know, I really think you should not find out and just forget about this talk. But anyway, so, you know, you can put QR codes anywhere. In fact, there's a Python library that all you have to do is import it, and then you've got QR codes. So script kiddies unite for the QR codes. So we've got some options, I think, for social engineering with the mobiles that we didn't necessarily have with our traditional devices. And I think that's interesting, and I think it's just going to get worse with things like the toilets. And, you know, when you go to the gas station now and it's like, oh, just swipe your thing to pay. And I'm just like, okay. So I think this is just going to get worse in terms of like anybody can just put up whatever tag they like of a certain protocol, and your phone will automatically read it if you let it, or prompt you to read it if you're doing it correctly. And probably most of the time you'll say yes anyway. So I really do think, like I said, I have to apologize to the social engineering people. Social engineering is not dead. Social engineering is alive and well, but it's in mobile. So, what about applications, right? So, if all else fails, why don't we just give them an app? You know, I'm living app purgatory right now because, like I said, every day I get 2 new ones. All I had to do was when I installed the first app, I accept their signing key, and then all the other apps come down every day without asking me, and that's awesome. But, you know, we like apps, right? Love them, hate them. It's a very complicated relationship between me and apps. So let's just pretend that all apps work for good, right? They never steal stuff from you. They're all awesome. So I always use ABC News as the example because I was on CNN one day and I used ABC News as the bad app because I thought it was on ABC News, but I was actually on CNN, and it would have made them mad except that, you know, I was exploiting someone else. So they actually liked it a lot. It totally didn't look like I didn't know which news program I was on right then. Security is hard, man. So anyway, so you've got a good app. Why can't we just make it into a bad app? You know, they all kind of follow some sort of random-ish pattern of how they work. You know, they have like a file that says all of the classes, and they have all the classes, and they have something that runs first when you start it. So, you know, me is kind of thinking back to the days of when I had to study algorithms in college, and I was usually asleep or maybe not there because it was 8 in the morning. But anyway, the little bit I remembered, I was like, couldn't I write an algorithm that would do this for me? And sure enough, I'm always surprised when something of mine works. It seems like there should be something harder to this. But sure enough, it's actually not that hard to take any app, rip it apart, put it back together with your extras, re-sign it with all sorts of weird keys, like there have been key vulnerabilities. You can just sign it with your key. You'd be surprised. Getting back to the social engineering thing, like with my Chinese app store, it's like, I'm not signed by Google Play. I'm like, what do I do? Oh, I just click yes. So, you know, probably key issues are not really an issue at all, but assuming they are, there's plenty of ways around it. What I like is that, you know, we see a lot of, kind of getting ahead of myself, but like security stuff for mobile, right? Security stuff, I say in quotations. And this is security stuff, right? So it keeps everything on the domain. It runs everything as root. It has all your signing keys sitting inside of it. So I get one domain account, log into it, grab your signing keys, sign my stuff, end of story. So not too hard. So apps are evil. You know, we've seen a lot with the security side, like, you know, your app authorities and like FireEye has something around it now where it's like they want to say which apps are good and which apps are bad. But in my experience with mobile malware, the stuff that looks the scariest is actually good, and the stuff that looks the least scary, according to those algorithms, is actually the bad stuff because it just throws an exploit after it installs and doesn't need any of that quote unquote scary stuff. So I think it's a really hard question about what makes good and what makes bad around apps, and we should just assume they're all bad for the sake of security. That's really the only way we're going to win this. They're all evil. We have evil devices in our enterprise. That's really what it comes down to. This guy walks into your enterprise. He's evil. We need to deal with him as an evil actor. And I feel like we can do this. I feel like we can deal with evil actors if we just treat them as such instead of trying to say that they're good. So, we've got an evil actor. What's this evil actor gonna do? So, he's gonna want to steal stuff from us. Well, his first target is this guy that he's already on. Why not steal everything we have here? Again, we get into those whole like security for mobile things. And it's like, oh, I can put a sandbox on this. I'm like, oh, I'll just throw a root exploit and then I can look right in memory. Come here, data. And all your data falls down. So I hate all security controls for mobile. I think that they don't work well enough. Which the only way they're going to start working well enough is we start saying that they suck and fixing them. You know, that's how all security controls work. So that's what we got to do as security people. Say, you know, you're doing this well, but you're doing this really shitty and you got to fix it. Instead of just being like, yay, security controls. So if you take one thing from this talk, it's that. You have your security controls that your enterprise is paying a lot of money for. You need to, you know, start thinking about what they're really providing you and what they're not. Because they are providing you a lot of things. But some of the things they say they're providing you, maybe they're not providing you. And it's up to you guys. No amount of me standing up here and going, rah, rah, no security controls is going to work. It's going to be you guys. So they're also going to control the device. So they're going to send out stuff on the behalf of the device, like text messages or post to Twitter or talk to other devices in the enterprise. When it shows up in the enterprise, it has direct access to things. And privilege escalation, I mean, pretty much all your malware that's remotely sophisticated does this. It doesn't ask for any permissions or anything like that to tip off your app authorities. It instead just throws an exploit after it gets on a device, and then it's got full privileges and no needs. Yay. And my very favorite, mobile pivoting. So in addition to talking to other devices, you can actually exploit other devices, which is awesome, I think, because again, we're putting all of our security around the perimeter. That's where we spend all our money. It's like, okay, you steal all my credit cards on the inside, but if it can't get out, that doesn't do you any good. So we're going to stop it at the perimeter and then everything will be fine. So that's where we're spending the most of our money. But if, like Robert Herjavec's speechwriters said, we're instead actually having every device be a mobile endpoint, then all that money we spend on the perimeter is now basically useless against our hardcore attackers because they can just pivot out. Because again, these guys are basically internet facing. They can call out through their mobile modem. Or, you know, we've seen weird stuff through the research community that may or may not have been true, like botnets that called out via sound, you know, bad BIOS. You know, I don't know if that was true, but I do know that the attack vector is completely legitimate. You can, on a mobile device at least, catch things via sound, like make a phone call in the background and send stuff, like basically have it speak the text on the other side. So it could totally work. So these guys are really kind of creepy. So, you know, traditionally this would be what happens. One device speaks to another device. We've got one device that's exploited. It talks to a non-exploited device and naturally exploits it. Any of you guys who are in charge of the security in your enterprise or your pen tester, you know, there's going to be something that's exploitable around here. If you've got any size enterprise whatsoever, you're going to have some stuff that isn't getting patched. You know, please patch your stuff. I don't know why you don't, but you don't. End of story. So we're going to get something, you know, it's going to be an easy win. It's not even going to be that hard. Something's going to get hit. It's going to go out through the perimeter. It is going to bypass your perimeter controls. Let's face it, it's not really that hard. All the money you're throwing at it, you know, we just get the same thing and get past it. And if we can do it, surely the bad guys can because they have more money and more skill. Let's face it, you know, we're not that cool compared to them. So it gets out to its attacker. But it gets a little more scary, again, when it does this. So it bypasses your perimeter entirely. So even if your perimeter controls are stopping things, suddenly this doesn't make it matter anymore because it calls out via an endpoint. So it bypasses all of your controls because it's coming through the mobile modem. So this totally works. I did something like this just to prove that I could. Again, I'm really surprised when anything of mine works because it's not particularly sophisticated. It's just like me and Stack Overflow trying to figure this stuff out. So when it works, I'm like, wow, the attackers must really have it easy if I got this to work in like a day. So, that's what I do. I prove that attacks work. So yeah, it works. Like, if you want to watch a video of it, look at SkyDogCon. I sent out a shell from an exploited machine to a phone on the podium with me, to the cell tower, to the other phone on the other side, and it picked back up on my laptop. And I did this at a conference network, ladies and gentlemen. You guys should know how hard that is. Like, if it'll work at a conference where all you guys are doing all sorts of nonsense, you know it's gonna work. So, this is what your attackers are probably doing in your enterprise every time you let a phone in. Which you say, we've got mobile security controls. So we've got enterprise mobility management. Unfortunately, the people who are buying the enterprise mobility management are generally in ops. So they want to say, look, these are all the phones. And these are all the phones that are here. And they have a long list of security things that they do. And, they're getting towards doing them well. If you think back, think about, like, firewalls, like, before they got all fancy, versus Nmap, We got your port scanner versus your firewall, and it was like a war for ages, and it's still a war for ages. And firewalls got better because things like Nmap kept hitting them. That's what we're not doing around this mobile enterprise management or mobile device management or whatever we're calling it today. Like, we had to change the name from MDM because that was like medium data, whatever. I don't know. There was another MDM, so they had to change it in Gartner, so now it's EMM. But anyway, so that's what we're not doing. They basically just said, okay, these are the things that we think are the problems, we're going to fix them. So we don't really know what the problems are around mobile, and we don't really know if these things fix them. I mean, antivirus is a total example of this, right? I mean, say what you will about antivirus. No, it's not going to fix your virus problem, but it is going to fix your, like, notable, easy, found, everywhere virus problems. Like, my mom downloads a game, and it has a virus in it. Antivirus is going to pick it up and kill it. Well, or at least it's going to disable the antivirus, and that's going to let me know that there's a virus and I need to kill it. So it does its job. Its job is just kind of overblown to the fact that, it obviously can't fix the virus problem. But, we have mobile antivirus, and it tries to do the same thing, right? It's like, I'm going to find the known viruses on the phone. But the way the phone is set up, it's like apps can't see each other's like private files. It's not like your Windows computers of the days past and even now. So it can't see anything. So your mobile antivirus is basically useless. Could we do antivirus on mobile? Totally. But people are spending tons of money on the one we've got, so why would we? So, it's up to us as security people to fix this. We already talked about data containers. Yeah, you just do a root exploit and pull it out of memory. This happened like 2009, 2010. Still, people are buying data containers. Hardened platforms. This is a black phone too. Thanks, black phone, for giving me the free phone. I exploited it with the Chinese app store. It doesn't care. But it's not designed to care. It's up to me as the user to make it strong. So, there are hardened platforms, but, it's really up to... I could make a hardened platform today and say, yay, Georgia's hardened platform. Is it? It's up to you guys to tell me whether it is or not. I don't have time to do all of them. And, of course, data loss prevention at the perimeter is not going to fix the mobile device problem. It could totally fix the, just Wi-Fi problem, but bring in the mobile modems, and we're done. So that's what we got to do, right? We got to see where we're at with the mobile devices in our enterprise. And you might not have mobile problems. You might have, no mobile devices or, only BlackBerries. And let's face it, those are too hard to write API calls for anybody to make malware for. But you probably have a lot of iPhones and Androids, and they probably are all over the place. Let's face it, that's probably what's going on. So we need to see, what the state is, particularly if we're spending money on mobile security controls. We need to see whether they're really providing value. Because I'd hate to see you guys spending your money on stuff that isn't providing you value when you could be spending it on me. I guess I put you all to sleep because that was funny. That was funny. I'm not very funny, but that was funny. Because let's, like, for instance, just like running a malicious application and then like nothing sees it. I'm like, why am I paying for this? So, I mean, I've got some examples here, do a jailbreak. I mean, jailbreaking is interesting, right? Because it's like all the jailbreak protection, all it'll do is see Cydia or super user. It was actually in a talk I gave at a business conference. So these are not supposed to be technical guys. Somebody puts up his hand and says, all I had to do was change the SU app to SU1 and it didn't see me anymore. I was just like, yay, security. Strings are awesome. So, yeah, it'll catch the people who want to exploit their phones because they can be cool, but it won't catch the bad guys because they don't care about Cydia or super user. They've got what they want with the root shell. So, yeah, it happens. So, really, it's up to you guys. You're going to have to fix this mobile problem because I can't do it alone. There's no time for demos because I talk too much, but questions to ask. So, naturally, you guys may want to ask me some questions, but I actually have some questions that you may want to go back and ask. So you're going to be like, I went to this thing and you guys paid for it, so you want your money's worth. So here's your money's worth right here. Ask these questions to your operations team about your mobile security right now, and this will give you a jumping off point about, this mobile thing that we do. So you've probably got a mobile problem. You probably know you have a mobile problem, but don't really know what to do with it. Everybody always asks me, like, okay, what do I do about it? And the answer is right now, really not much, but that's actually the problem I'm trying to solve. I'm trying to make it such that you actually do have something you can do here, and it's not by making an MDM that works, that's for sure. Well, if somebody would write an MDM that worked, that would be awesome, but they don't have the PR and marketing department that your big players like Mobile Iron and those other big ones. Yeah, I should probably say more than one so they don't think I'm picking on them. What's another big MDM? Airwatch, that's the other big one. So those guys have a big marketing department. So if you make an MDM that works, you're going to get completely destroyed by those people with a big marketing department. Because again, for the same reason, you have no way to tell which ones do well and which ones don't. So the ones with the big marketing departments are going to win until we fix this problem. So I don't think we're going to fix the problem by making an MDM that works. We're going to fix this problem by giving us a way to find out whether we have a mobile problem, what our mobile problem is, and how we can fix it, and how our solutions right now are failing to fix it. So that's my whole thing, just something to go away with. These slides are going to be up, and if you want to contact me, this is me, and I have cards. Look at me being all professional. I actually remembered to bring my cards. So I need to give you guys some time to ask me questions. I'm a little out of breath. Questions? Okay, so my mobile device framework. So I got a DARPA grant like 2.5 years ago to do a mobile security testing framework, which I did, and I open sourced it, but I'm not the best coder ever. So, people like the problem with open source is like you got to get more people to help you with it. And I can totally understand why people didn't, because I'm not the best coder ever. But, it kind of like, I guess, paved the way. And now I'm productizing it. So now we've got real developers. So now I think a lot of the other problem is that even in like your very hacker centric, even consulting programs, they want like a real name behind it, like Metasploit becoming Metasploit Pro. Like from a hacker perspective, that makes no sense whatsoever. It's like, you've already got this thing, why are you paying all this money to make this thing again? But like for people to buy it, even if it's hacker centric consulting firms, they're going to buy Metasploit Pro. They may still use Metasploit free in the background as the hackers, but they've got Metasploit Pro to show their people in the end that they're not being crazy with this silly open source tool. So I did make a product, well, an open source product, and it's still out there. So, you can download it off GitHub, and, I encourage you to do so. I mean, most of it still works, but I am productizing it. We're raising a seed round and all that right now, but so I'm going to make it so that, everybody can do this. We're looking for pilots, people who realize they have this problem, make it kind of more of a legitimate tool. Even InMap went legitimate eventually. So, that's the state of the framework, is that we're trying to go legitimate with like real backers. And, the kinds of things that your enterprises would hopefully be interested in buying, as opposed to like, what's this weird stuff on the GitHub that falls down sometimes. So that's the state of things. Nothing else? I guess I bored you all to tears, right? After I dug myself out of that snowbank to get here. All right, well, thank you guys for coming out. If no one had come, I would have been sad.